This is the CVLife Eagle Blaze, a 7 to 35 power first focal plane scope with a 56mm objective lens. And while some may be surprised that a budget Amazon brand like CVLife even makes a 35 power scope, what really surprises me is that this Chinese-made scope has Japanese ED glass. Does that make a difference? Let's find out. I won't do a boring unboxing video. Instead, let's just take a look at the contents of the box. This is the CVLife Eagle Blaze, a 7 to 35 power first focal plane scope with a 56mm objective lens and a 34mm tube. And it is a sizable scope at over 16 inches long, and that is before you add a sunshade to the end of this. Yet, despite its size, it is not an overly heavy scope at a little over 32 ounces, which is lighter than some comparable budget scopes like the Discovery Optics or the Arcan scope at this power range in terms of magnification. It has an illuminated reticle with 6 levels of illumination with an off in between each of the indexes, and it shares the turret with your parallax focus. It runs from 35 yards to infinity, and I know that's not super close, but this is a long-range scope at 7 to 35 power, so yeah, not a scope that you'll be using for close-range engagements. Now let's take a look and listen to these turrets here, which are locking. You pull up to unlock. Oh, nicely loud, tactile positive, and really no slop in between each of these very clear clicks. And each click is a quarter MOA. These turrets are resettable. You just unscrew that top screw, center screw there. It comes with a little tool. You can use a flathead or a coin as well. And it also does come with a zero stop ring that you can drop in there once you have this all zeroed out. And that engages a pin and gives you a nice solid repeatable zero stop. Let's take a look at our windage, also locking. Audible, tactile positive, just like the elevation. Nice clear clicks, no slop. Very nice. All right, and our magnification ring turns smoothly. A little bit of grit you can hear, but otherwise feels good. Good resistance. Does come with a screw and throw lever, but it's you could run it without it. And our diopter turns smoothly. Does have a little indicator pin or dot there to tell you how far you've moved it. So overall, I have to say this is a nice looking budget scope. CVLife has really stepped up in terms of their feature sets and build quality, though you can see a little bit of in the fit and finish that it is a bit of a budget scope, but the more important thing is what does it look like through the glass. So we'll take a look at that next. The box does come with a set of rings, and these have 2 recoil lugs at the base, 2 torque screws at the base, so this is not going to be moving on a pick rail, and torque screws at the top of the rings. And I don't notice any egregious gaps between the top and bottom or blems. There is a little bit of an overlap and underlap between the top and bottom of the rings, so for those who are into precision long-range competition, you're going to want to lap these or replace them with much higher-end rings. But for the sake of this product review, we'll use CVLife's rings that are included and mount them with the scope. Before we get started with the test, I'd just like to take a quick break here to talk about this episode's sponsor, Aura. For the cost of just a VPN, I'm getting a whole suite of security services, including $1 million in identity theft insurance, and they're even removing me from those damn data broker listings. Use my link, aura.com/moondog, and you can try them for 14 days, free. And if you use that link, you're helping to support this channel. You know, identity fraud is a real thing, and with AI, it's all too easy to spoof your identity. That's why you should try out Aura. All right, let's get back to the tests. We are looking at the Peak of Mount Davidson, approximately 1,400 yards away, through the Eagle Blaze at its lowest power of 7 to give our best overall view through the glass. And it is a very windy, blustery day today, so pardon any wind noise and any construction noise since they're doing a remodel down the block. But one thing I note here is that the scope has a nice, crisp, clear, and color-accurate image. You may notice a bit of a color shift inside of the scope to that outside of the scope in terms of the color of the sky, and that is actually realistic because there is a big, thick cloud bank behind the hill there. So that's the reason why the sky looks very different in color through the scope. I also note that the reticle is actually very bold. The outer crosshairs make it very visible. Now, as we increase magnification, we are just going to magnify all the faults in the glass. So let's bring it up to about halfway, typical sweet spot for a scope. Again, still pretty clear, sharp from center to the outer edge with no real visible chromatic aberration. And now let's bring this all the way up to its maximum of 35, and we've lost quite a bit of light and contrast as to be typical with a 35 power scope. But we can clearly make out the trail marker sign. That is about a 3-foot-ish steel sign at the top of the hill there. That's just a little bit above the center crosshairs. That's about a 3-foot-ish steel sign on top of a pole, which is a good proxy for an IPSC target at this distance. I'm going to turn this on to its maximum of 6 power, and that is quite visible at the very center of the crosshairs there. But let's bring the magnification down all the way to its lowest at 7, and that is still visible, though it is noonday sun, so not nuclear red dot bright, but certainly visible in daylight. And we have the scope set at our lowest power of 7, and we're looking at a reference targets downrange at 100 yards. And this is a good opportunity to see what our range of adjustments are, starting with our elevation. These turrets do turn a little bit stiffly, and that is the very topmost. So quite a bit of range of adjustments here for our elevation. And let's turn this down, see where our bottom is, and that is the very bottom. All right, let's bring this back to factory 0 on this turret here. And now let's check our windage. All right, that is the right extent of adjustments. And that is the left extent of adjustments. All right, let's bring this back to 0 on these turrets. All right, let's bring up our magnification to 16 power, which is halfway and typically a scope's sweet spot. Oh, looks like I'm a little too high there, so let's bring back our elevation down a full rotation to get it to 0. That is roughly where I was aiming originally, because I remember it was pretty much the center of our reference target board, and that roughly lines us up to the bottom left highlighting square on that grid target. So let's do a box test. Let me just dial in 8 MOA on our elevation. Oops, there we go. That puts us into our next highlighting grid. Let me dial in 8 MOA on our windage, and that puts us into roughly the next corner box. And if I dial our elevation back to 0, and if I dial our windage back to 0, that should put us right back where we started. All right, let's do a bit more of a abuse test on these turrets. This is the nipple twister coined by my buddy Cyclops Joe. And we're just going to turn the heck out of these turrets for a good 20 seconds or so and see if they'll come back to 0. If we dial this back to 0, and we dial this back to 0, yeah. Now let's bring up our magnification all the way to its highest magnification of 35 and take a look at that target. Very minimal chromatic aberration and good color rendition. And let me just tilt the scope down slightly so we can see the lower targets quite clearly. And on the bottom left, I can clearly make out bullet hits on the reactive sticker target on the center of that paper target, as well as 2
tiny 22 caliber holes below that reactive sticker target, and in the resolution chart on the bottom right, it's quite clear. I can make out both horizontal and vertical lines down to, say, element 1 in group 0, which is remarkable. But then again, it is a 35 power scope.
Thanks for sticking around till the end of the video, and if you haven't already, don't forget to hit that like button and the subscribe button and notification bell buttons. There's no subscription fee to subscribe to a channel, and if you're already subscribed, thanks for doing that. And I'd like to thank CVLife for sending out the Eagle Blaze 7-35 for me to test. I found this to be a surprisingly good budget long-range scope. And by budget, this has a street price just under $500, which is surprising because it wasn't too long ago that you couldn't get a decent long-range scope for under $500, never mind a 35 power scope. And CVLife has really stepped up the quality and the feature sets of their scopes. For example, these are excellent turrets. I dare say they're even better than a Strike Eagle, but no way am I claiming this is as good as a Vortex scope or a Loophole or even an Arkin EP5. But this also has Japanese ED glass, and it does perform. Has very little chromatic aberration, color rendition and accuracy is excellent, and it is plenty sharp. Though at 35 power, it does get a little bit milky unless you're smack dab in the center of the eye box. But the eye box isn't bad, especially for a 7-35 power scope. The only peeve I'd have to say is the reticle, which at 7 power, it's actually a very visible and usable reticle, but because it's a first focal plane, when you get it to 35, that reticle grows, gets bigger and thicker to the point where it's a little too thick, in my opinion. If you're going to be using this for bench rest or F-class, the reticle is going to obscure a little too much of your bullseye at 1,000 yards. But that's my opinion, and everybody's opinion about reticles is a little bit different. But let me know in the comments if you prefer a reticle that's visible at low power with a first focal plane or not. I mean, that is a bit of a trade-off. And if you're interested in picking up this scope, I've included affiliate product links as well as more information in my full written write-up at moondogindustries.com. You'll find a link to that article in this video's description. Fortunately, I cannot include affiliate links in the video description because that's against YouTube's rules. So yeah. Anyway, if you've had experiences with CVLife, good or ill, also leave me a comment about that, because my experiences with this scope and CVLife are based on a sample set of one, my own. I'd like to hear your opinions. Anyway, thanks for watching this video and for sharing it on your socials. God bless. Moondog out. Hey, I'd like to know what you thought of this video. Leave me a comment or chat with me on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, MeWe, Instagram, or Locals. And if you want to see all of my videos, go to moondogindustries.com.